Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to talk today about enduring the holiday season with a narcissistic mother and dysfunctional family dynamics. And this came to me because, of course, we're entering into December. The holiday season is underway, and I saw the Christmas tree going up in my lobby of my apartment building. And in the past, these signs of the season would be a time for me to experience some dread instead of cheer and good spirit. And I would feel very alone in this sense of not looking forward to the holiday. There was, on top of knowing that this was going to bring up all sorts of bad memories from childhood and adolescence and young adulthood of my chaotic, sometimes violent, Jerry Springer-like family. I also had my present circumstance, which at the time was one of feeling overwhelmed, obligated, guilt-ridden at Christmas time, knowing that nothing I did would be for me. I would be required to abandon anything I might want, even though at the time I wouldn't even know what I want. I was so disconnected from myself. But my job was to try to meet everybody else's needs, many of them competing, and stretch myself incredibly thin, be it in my energy, my time, my finances, and so on. And it was the worst time of the year for me. I felt uh, just doom during this time, and compounded by the fact that for much of this, I was married to someone who was very emotionally absent, we can say, and who mocked me for not liking Christmas. No interest in understanding why, just what's wrong with you? Everybody likes Christmas. I love Christmas, that sort of thing. So, not only the feeling we have that isn't good, the obligations and the overwhelm and the guilt and the triggers and all of it on top of it, but then we also have the social kind of a forced joviality that you don't really feel. So perhaps you have to put a little bit of phony celebration on top of all that. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but that's where I was at for a lot of my childhood, adolescence, and adult life until I started doing this work to heal from all of this. And we fast forward to today, and now I am having the most peaceful, beautiful holidays anyone could ever want. I only do what I want with whom I want. I spend as little or as much money as I want to, and I only tune into my own desires. That is my only guidepost for creating my Christmas holiday. It is, what do I want? Who do I want to spend it with? What will make me happy? And so on. And so with this talk, I just wanted to bring to you some ways that you can start to make the shift from where I was, if you're resonating with that, to where I am today, which is a feeling of complete peace and freedom. So when I see the Christmas decorations going up, I'm just feeling admiration, neutrality, true celebration in a much quieter way that is not phony. And I would love to, give you some tips that have helped me make this transition from chaos to peace at the holiday time. So number one is manage your expectations. And that refers to acknowledging that this is not going to be a happy family celebration, and that if you've decided to, that you are in contact with this person in this family and you're walking into a gathering where it's not going to be the happy, loving time that a lot of normal families might have. Don't go in with your armor off and your guard down with the little girl inside pretending that it's going to be different this time. So a lot of times we don't protect ourselves because we go in believing that it's up to us to change the experience of the family holiday. And I mean by that is that because since childhood we've blamed ourselves for the way things have gone, you've always believed that if I could only be different, if I could only be better, if I were more lovable, I would have a different experience in this family. And that's actually not true at all. It was never about you. It was always about the limitations of your mother and other members of the family. That's why they couldn't and would not meet your needs or respect your boundaries and so on and so on. And so you want to go in understanding that it's probably going to be a lot like it's always been, and the little girl inside me hoping that it's going to be different, all that does is open me up to being re-traumatized and disappointed in a really big way. And so, how can I bring my adult out and understand that actually I can't be perfect enough for these people? And anyway, that's not the goal. Being perfect is not the goal when you're healing. It's actually moving away from that and allowing yourself to be all that you are. Now, of course, in a situation like this, being all that you are, may not be the right thing to do. And I know that sounds strange because we're going after authenticity here. But in fact, if you are dealing with a dysfunctional family, the invitation is not to bring all of you and express everything. It is really to understand that you're with people who are very limited in their capacity to receive that, and that they're likely going to demonize you for that. They're going to make you feel very badly for that. And the Christmas visit is really not a time to do that. So if you have decided that you're going to visit for Christmas, you want to manage those expectations. Don't go in unguarded. And then when the same thing happens that always happens, like mom criticizes you or someone makes a backhanded comment or does something inappropriate and you're shocked. But really, why are we shocked when the same thing that's always happened is happening again? The shock actually would be if it went smoothly and nobody criticized you or gave you a backhanded compliment or whatever it is that happens in your family. So that's the first one. Manage your expectations. Allow your competent adult to come out and realize what you're actually dealing with instead of the child who lives in the fantasy that if I can just be perfect, everything will be good. It's all up to me. You don't have any control over that. Number two is to set boundaries around your time, energy, and money. And boundaries around time are very simple. So it just looks like if you usually spend days and days with this family and it takes everything you have uh, not to kind of lose it, then maybe you might consider spending less time. So it doesn't even have to be an overnight, or maybe it could be one overnight. Or could you instead stay at a nearby hotel? Could you go for just the dinner or maybe a few hours, dessert and then you're gone? Can you find ways to kind of release the stress and the tension that you might experience, by going for a walk, perhaps? If there's a dog there, you might take the dog for a walk. Can you excuse yourself and go to the bathroom and do some breathing, some deep breathing, and, feel into yourself? So that's the time part. Just manage how much time can you reduce it while you're there? How do you use your time and your energy? It's the same thing. So you don't have to see everybody. You might remember the Four Christmases movie where they had to go to all, their parents were both divorced and they had to go to all the families in the same day. And I used to have a situation like that too, where I felt obligated to visit both parents, even though they lived on opposite ends of town. And I had kids. And so it was a real burden for me. And I never even thought of setting that boundary of like, well, maybe I could see this one this Christmas and the other one next, or Christmas with one, Boxing Day with the other. And Boxing Day is, I know it's not in the United States, but it's the day after Christmas in Canada. And that is a holiday. We have it as a holiday. It was one of the things, as an aside, when I moved to the States, kind of blew my mind that everyone works the day after Christmas and there's no Boxing Day. So, anyway, that's my Canadianism coming out. Then with the finances, I used to always blow the bank because I just couldn't say no. I felt so obligated to buy everybody I knew a gift, all my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles, all the kids, like it was insane. And so if you look at it logically, a lot of us are living on a budget. We have a monthly budget. So why in December all of a sudden are we going to have all these thousands of extra dollars to spend on this stuff? Like it doesn't make any sense. And that's why a lot of us go into debt and we get the January credit card bill that's massive. That's very common. That's almost the norm. But can you work within your budget? Like, can you say, this is how much I'm going to spend in December, including Christmas, and that's it? Or can you do things like, I'm only buying for the kids? If there's kids in your family, like your sister's kids, your kids, you're just going to buy for them. I got really radical after I started healing, and I only buy for my own kids and sometimes for a good friend. But even that, we usually just go for dinner. So I really only buy for my own kids who are now adults and often just want money anyway. But yeah, that's what I did. I said, I'm only buying for my own kids. Like, how much freedom is there in that? And so the trick is to understand that when you are kind of trying to buy your worth in other people's eyes, because that's what we're doing when we are buying all these gifts for people that we can't afford, we're believing that if we don't do that, that it's going to reflect badly on us. Because let's be honest, when we're doing this most of the time, it's not all out of love. It's not all because it makes us feel so good to buy all these gifts for someone else. It actually usually feels like the opposite. You feel kind of used and you might have some suppressed resentment around it. And the truth is, when you're doing all this giving, and by the way, this goes for every kind of giving in your life, so pay attention. When you're doing all this giving without being asked, it is not appreciated. So, all these things you're doing for other people, all these things you're giving, when it's actually not explicitly being asked of you, you are often assuming that this is what is expected of you. That's a lot of the reason why it's not appreciated. And that creates the resentment. And this resentment goes into your body and actually creates disease as well. So you want to pay attention to that, the importance of setting boundaries around these things, because they can be a matter of health and even a matter of life and death, because people get chronic illness, autoimmune, and so on from this suppressed resentment from overgiving, especially women. And number three is to tune into yourself. And this is simply tuning into what you want, because a lot of the reason why we let other people create our holiday based on what they want, and we're just reacting to it and giving them what they want, uh, we have the opportunity to design our own holiday according to our desires. And that may feel out of reach right now, and it may not happen all at once, but you can take steps toward that holiday that you create by design instead of a holiday that is a result of your reactions to what other people are demanding of you. And so when you are at the dinner, for example, or at the gathering, there might be a tendency to withdraw from yourself. So detach from yourself, disconnect from yourself, and you're overly focused on what the other people are thinking or worried about what are they going to say, when is the trigger going to come, all of this kind of stuff. And that's a lot of the problem is that you are not tuned into yourself. You're completely tuned out and focused on other people. And so you're already, the trigger is waiting to happen, essentially. And what you want to do is from time to time, just check in with yourself. Literally, just check in with your body and say, like, what do I want right now? Even if it means that I have to go to the bathroom or I need to go and do some deep breathing because I'm starting to feel a little activated. And often overeating and over drinking is the way that we compensate for how we feel. Can you actually tune into how you feel and feel it for a change? Can you eat because you're hungry and not because you're trying to comfort yourself through this painful situation? Can you comfort yourself in other ways? Can you even do it through a soft touch toward yourself? And this can be done without really being noticed. You can put a hand on your heart. You can put a hand on your belly. You can put your two hands on the tops of your legs. These things aren't really going to be noticed, and they can just serve to remind you that you are there for yourself, that you are here, that you have the power and the ability to comfort yourself, even when the situation is uncomfortable. So now what you're doing is giving yourself the comfort. It's a form of reparenting that you might have gone in still hoping that these people would give to you, maybe still hoping that your mother would be that for you. We are letting go of that hope. That's the old little girl fantasy. We're letting go of that, and now we're turning to ourselves for that comfort and that support. And number four is to understand your triggers. So, triggers tend to be things that happen, they're emotional activations, and they are kind of an over response to a relatively small thing. So, if you notice that your nervous system is going into fight or flight or freeze or fawn, and this is where the things happen like the heavy breathing, the sweating, the rapid heartbeat. Your legs might be shaky, your voice will become shaky, and you're going to lose kind of the executive functioning, which is the adult, the competent adult with the good decision making skills, the good self support, the rationality, the understanding that these people are not on my side. Why would I expect that? All of these things. What happens in a trigger response is that you're going into your animal brain. So you're going into survival mode, and the unhealed child, is out essentially with the belief that I am back in that home. Essentially, I'm back in that childhood home where I was trapped, where I had no choice, where nobody had my back, where I was damned if I did, damned if I did. I could never say the right thing. Nobody understood me. I had no one to talk to. But actually, those things aren't true anymore. But it's not enough to just tell yourself that, because that's trying to use logic to overcome the trauma in the body. And survival mode is going to trump logic every time, because survival is primary. Like we have to survive, and all our resources will go into that survival if it's called upon. And it doesn't mean you actually are in a life-threatening situation, but the nervous system feels like you are, and that's all it needs. It doesn't know time. It doesn't understand that you're not actually back in that childhood home. It just feels that way, and it's getting ready to save your life. So the logic isn't really going to work. And that's why a lot of boundary setting techniques and self-help don't work, because they do appeal to logic, and that's not enough. That's just part of it. So what you want to do when you have a trigger is give yourself some time. This might be the time that you go to the bathroom or go for the walk, and tune in to: what meaning am I giving this? How is this making me feel? For example, disrespected, dismissed, like I don't matter. And then, can I connect? And the meaning you're giving it is that I don't matter, even though that's totally not true. Just because someone else is disrespecting you has no it doesn't say anything about your worth, but the child still believes that. She believes these people kind of decide her worth by their words, and it's not true anymore. But you still believe that inside. And so you take that meaning and the feelings behind it, and you kind of go back to: when did I feel this for the first time? When did I feel this way for the first time? Or if you can't remember the very first time, because that could be really early childhood, do you remember a time in the past, like, adolescence, sometime in childhood, when you felt this? And where was I? And what was happening? and realize that, for example, for me, it was like being 2 or 3 years old and being 5 and 7 years old and being in the home and never always having to listen to someone lecture me and never having a voice. So my trigger was somebody monologuing at me. If somebody was talking at me a lot and I wouldn't really get a word in edgewise, or they weren't asking me anything about myself, that would be a huge trigger, and I would go into fight or flight. And I made that connection to when I was stuck in that house listening to these incompetent adults tell me what I should be doing or what I had to do. And I wasn't allowed to respond. I wasn't asked what I wanted or needed. It was like I was being looked through. There was no connection. There was just this authoritarian, like, you do what I say or else. And the or else kind of felt like death of a kind for a child in that situation. So that's the trigger. So you can make that connection. There's some power there already. Once you make that connection, you want to go to that child in your mind or in your body and and validate that child's feelings, let them know that what you were feeling was right. Like, you shouldn't have been treated that way. You did matter. They should have given you more than they gave you. You deserved more than that. And how thankful I am to you with the way you handled it, because that's what kept us alive. And that's actually true. And and the logic can come in there. I'm an adult now. I have access to resources I didn't before. I'm not trapped here. I can drive away right now if I want to. I don't have to listen to them really. It might feel like I do, but I'm free now, or at the very least, I have access to things that I didn't when I was that child in the home. So to me, it's a combination of the logic and the soothing and the validating of the child who still believes you're in trouble. And then the final one, number 5, I wanted to give you to start shifting your holiday experience is to find support. Because I told you at the beginning how isolated I felt during the holiday season. Not only did I feel alone, but I had to pretend that I was enjoying this. It was sort of like forced celebration on me during the whole month of December. It just felt like such a fraud to me because I really didn't enjoy any of it, and it was just a series of bad memories and self-abandonment. And there was nothing for me that was for me in that. And so, what I would ask you to do is perhaps could you find a friend instead of going into the situation, the family gathering alone and undefended? And even if you're married, you might not have support. Remember, my husband wasn't supportive of me, so it might not even be your spouse. Can you find a friend who understands, Can you find a support group of people who get it, And if you do have that friend or that group, can you stay in touch with them throughout? Can you maybe text them, I'm going in now? And if something happens, can you text them about what's happening? And then maybe after you can have a text or a call to debrief about how it went, and to not be hard on yourself if you didn't do it perfectly, because you won't. You're just starting to practice. What went well? What would you do differently next time? See it not as a time of self-criticism, but just as a time of reflection on how you can continue to create a better experience year over year at the holiday time. And then finally, support might look like getting a coach like me, someone like me who can help you through the holiday season and beyond. I want to wish you a peaceful December and a peaceful holiday season, however you celebrate. And I hope some of these 5 tips will help you start to incrementally improve your experience of the holiday. So it's not all about them and it is more about you. And if you have enjoyed this, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and maybe hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time a new video comes out. And feel free to look at the library of videos on this channel. If you're the daughter of a narcissistic mother, especially, this is going to be a gold mine for you. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.